Welcome to Hospitality on the Rise, the podcast about the people shaping the hospitality industry and their journeys. I'm your host, Alice Cheng, founder and CEO of Culinary Agents, hospitality's go-to hiring platform. And I'm here to give you your dose of virtual mentorship. Here, we'll be sharing the stories, lessons learned, and advice from hospitality leaders who've carved out their own path to success. After all, this industry is where many get their start and go on to do incredible things. Whether you're a pro, starting out, or just love the hustle, this podcast highlights what makes hospitality extraordinary: the people. We're so excited to have Jeff Benjamin here with us today. Jeff is a longtime restaurateur and hospitality expert, a key figure in shaping Philly's reputation as top-tier food destination. He's the CEO and board member of Federal Donuts and Chicken, COO, co-founder of VB Grupo, co-founder of Vetri Community Partnership, managing partner at F&B Plus, author of many books, and a little birdie told me there might be one coming up. So without further ado, Jeff, welcome. Thank you for spending your time with us this morning.
Great to be here. Thanks, Alice.
And I've had the pleasure of knowing you for many, many years, for almost the entire lifespan of Culinary Agents, so this decade plus. You have been a busy person. You have been busy. Um, How did it all start? Like, how did you know that hospitality was your thing?
Yeah, real early on, I was a teenager looking for work as you know extra income, and our industry is really receptive to that kind of thing. The hours work out for someone who's in school or who has other obligations. And we had just moved to New York. I hadn't met anybody, didn't make any friends. I was looking for things to do on weekends, and I took a job as a busboy. And um, it may sound odd to say to those who are currently toiling as busboys as I was, but it bit me the day I started. From that moment on, I knew I was going to do something in hospitality for the rest of my life.
That's amazing. I mean, you got to start somewhere, right?
It was just there was just always something happening. There was a lot of action going on. It was just a fun environment, and yeah, it was a lot of work. I was working at a catering hall. We were there till 3 in the morning, and I just couldn't think of anything else I wanted to do.
So, knowing this that early, were you like, I'm going to go to school for this? I want to just keep working. Where did it go from there?
Career path wasn't as well spelled out back then. There was no internet. There was no way I could search what was available to me. There were only a handful of colleges and universities that were specializing in this. Of note would be Cornell, UMass, UNLV at the time. So kind of what I did was I applied to those schools, to UMass and Cornell, and I got in and said, "This is what I'm going to do." I ended up choosing UMass. But really, it was an economic decision, and spent 4 years in Massachusetts and got a degree. It wasn't clearly spelled out. I think I could have just worked my way through things, but it certainly helped me to see different parts of the industry. It exposed me to hotels, restaurants, clubs, and then ultimately I launched my career in contract dining with what was called ARA Services at the time, and that was Aramark.
Yeah. I see you're big. I know and see you're a big baseball fan. So maybe that was your way of getting into all the games, right?
Honestly, and to this day, I still kind of utilize that strategy. We have multiple outlets in arenas and sporting stadiums, and I use that. I
Yeah.
use that to
You
get
gotta go
in.
in for a quality check, right? You gotta go
Yeah.
make your rounds. Well, great. So you're working in it, and I always kind of try to draw this piece out because when I talk to leaders, they make it all sound so easy. Like, I wanted to do it. I went to school. I started working, and then poof, now I own all these restaurants and I'm a CEO, all that good stuff. So I'm here trying to fill in the blanks here. So you want to do it. You went to school. You're learning. You're exposed to all these things, and now you're working in more of a food service type of establishment. What made you kind of look? Because there are differences. There's similarities, but there's differences. What made you kind of look more into like an independent restaurant space?
Yeah, mostly I couldn't scratch that entrepreneurial itch. Working in a corporate environment provided me a lot of tools that I wouldn't realize I needed until I needed them. Structure, process, things like that. I learned at the hands of the Aramark Corporation at Restaurant Associates. but that itch to kind of be innovative and work with people who are super creative. Not to say that there's no creativity there, but there's a box you need to live in, and setting your kind of own destiny. Back when in '98 when Mark and I opened Vetri, there wasn't a ton of growth oriented entrepreneurialism. You opened your restaurant, you ran your restaurant for the rest of your life, you made a decent living, and that was it. No one really talked about being a multi-unit restaurant operator back then, and so it was kind of just more of a scratching of an itch than anything else.
Yeah, and so that's a great segue. So how did you meet Mark? How did that partnership come about? I mean, it's been many, many years.
Yeah, it was a series of kind of just kind of happy accidents. Mark was coming home from a couple year stint in Italy where he was honing his skills as a chef, and I was working in contract dining in New York, and his brother and I were friends through mutual friends who introduced us. And we had afternoons free, so he and I would often play golf at Van Cortlandt Park in New York, in the Bronx. You could take the one train up and play. So one day we're on the course, and he says, "You should meet my brother. He's a chef." Um, I'm like, "Yeah, I'll meet him. I don't have a job for him or anything like that. If that's what you're asking." He said, "No, no, no. He's got a job. He's just moving home, and you're in the food business. He's in the food business." And we met and became friends, and kind of just kept in touch. And at one point, I had mentioned to him that it'd be really cool to go out on my own one day. I've got this safety net of working for a corporate uh, establishment, but it'd be fun. And he said, "I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna be a, chef of my own restaurant one day too." And we got to talking, and then at some point, his brother, who's in the film business, was making an independent movie and used my apartment as a set for one of his first movies, which I'll never do that again, by the way. But
The
um,
one in New York? The
craft,
one in
so
Midtown East?
yeah, yeah, and, craft services was run by Mark and his dad. So every morning I would sit and have coffee with Mark and his dad, and at one point, Mark's like, I'm moving to Philly back home," which is where they're from, "to open a restaurant. You wanna join me?" And I said, "Sure." About 2 weeks later, he called me, he goes, "Well, by the way, were you serious?" I said, "Sure." He's like, "Great." In July of '98, I visited this, like, worn out restaurant that needed a ton of work in Philadelphia, and in September of '98, we opened.
Wow, I don't hear those types of stories. That now it's like I'm waiting for my permit for the no.
Well, you're right, and honestly, there's a lot of rent. We did most of the work ourselves. He and I stained the floors ourselves, and I think we opened for like $75,000, something like that.
Well, and the rest is history. It's still there
I
and
keep saying
thriving
it's the
right now.
26-year overnight sensation. So,
Well, and then you went on to open many within,
yeah.
pretty short amount of time.
Yeah, the first window of time was longer by today's standards. It took us about 8 years to get our second restaurant because we never were searching. It just kind of opportunity hit, and we said, people keep leaving us to go do their own thing because we're not big enough to promote people. And we found a space, and it found us actually, and we opened in a part of town that people don't typically open restaurants, and it kind of took off nicely. And then that spawned multiple within several years. So 8 years between 1 and 2, and then for the next 5 years, we opened another 7 or 6 or 7. So, yeah, it helped us grow.
Yeah, and I'm gonna hone in on something you just said, which is, people are leaving us and what the expansion sometimes part of the strategy is how do you create more opportunities for people you want to retain, right? And by default, you're growing your footprint in business.
100%, and I think it's a necessity. I mean, you start to realize as a sous chef or as an assistant general manager that the general manager and the chef both own the restaurant. There's no promotion for you. So your resume is constantly out on the street. And, I didn't fault anybody for doing it. So when we were able to open other restaurants and give other people avenues, ultimately you create a culinary director position and a director of operations position and multiple GM. And now you see a pathway towards career rather than job.
Throughout this time. So I'm curious too, what were some of the aha slash lessons learned, especially from those early years? Because now you're on to I can't even count. I lost count.
Well, we've grown, soul grown again, invested in a few other things. I don't know that necessarily aha moments because maybe I'm not as quick to study, so it takes me a little while to get to aha. But you know, a lot of the things that we talk about are cliches, and they're cliches for a reason because they're true. It's about the people, it's about the relationships. You know, don't go chasing the overnight success. Don't just grab a deal because there's a lot of money involved, or don't turn it down because it take a lot of work. You know, hard work can get you where you need to get to, and it may take you a little longer, but there's a reward there. But I'd say the most important thing is we surrounded ourselves with quality people for the vast majority of our career. And we've had some fitness starts along the way, and as you probably know in your end of the business, there's some bad hires out there. I don't know if they're necessarily bad people, but the fit matters, right? Oftentimes when I was counseling a manager ready for their next step, it was often, "Get ready for your next step, but not with us." And that's, a hard conversation. I think probably the most recent lesson that was made clear to me, probably one that I knew all along, is kind of your first loss is your best loss. You know, um, when you're working with someone who clearly doesn't fit with your organization or isn't part of your growth strategy, and you kind of keep them around because you're a nice person, and you don't want to hurt anyone's feeling. You're doing them no service at all. So helping them understand what's best for them and for you is probably the best advice you can give someone.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice because I would imagine in the world of hospitality, that whole like give them another chance, another chance. There absolutely is that makes the industry so great because it is a place that welcomes from all directions and does give second, third, maybe fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth chances. Um, but there is a balance to what's best for you, the business, and also them. Right? And things change, circumstances change, people change, everything changes.
That's exactly right. The person I hired, in 2001 was great at 2001 Vetri organization. But by the time we got to 2005, they were ready for something else. Or like you said, circumstances changed. Maybe they have a family now and their needs are different. That happened with me and Mark, right? When we started, we were both single guys opening a restaurant. We had no other care in the world. And then as we grew our families and our needs changed, we started to look through the lens of family people, and we hired based on people who saw that kind of ethos as well. It just changed. It changes your perspective.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it continues to change. So speaking of continuing to change, so you had mentioned you built, sold, etc. So you some would say, I would say, others would say as well, that you have a keen eye of recognizing opportunity. Um, got any tips and tricks on what's your framework there? Spill your secrets. Um,
No, that's not necessarily tricks. And I think if I documented the missed opportunities, it'd be a longer list than the ones that were successful. But we talk about our successes a lot more. The reality is, I think that one piece of advice I'd give you is take the meeting. Doesn't matter. Just always take the meeting. Understand, yeah. What's a half hour of your time to spend with someone who's got a new good idea, or maybe it turns out to be a bad idea? Um, Most people know that when they reach out with a potential opportunity for us, I'll spend a half hour with them. And at the end of that half hour, it may have just been a half hour spent, and that's that, and we move on our separate ways. There are people I've met with and passed on an opportunity with that 2 years later show up with a really good one. So they're already in my, well, to use an outdated term, they're already in my Rolodex, right? And um, yeah, I think I just dated myself. I did have a Rolodex on my desk for the first 5 years we were open. But I think many people look on its face and judge that book by the cover and say, that doesn't look like an opportunity for me. And then all of a sudden, in hindsight, they see someone who took that opportunity. Wow, I could have done that. So I think that's where take the meeting.
yeah, yeah, that's great. You never know. Um, the so you took the meeting, and you built the restaurant empire. You moved on to you and Mark kind of have been together and continuing to do things together. Kind of took a step away from the independent restaurant space for a little bit, but
Yep.
then you just couldn't stay away.
Bug bit you, right? I mean, that's
Oh, you took the meeting, right? The opportunity
right.
came and here you are. What are how do you balance? Because you've got a couple of really big titles and roles here. How are you balancing all of these moving parts?
I think I said it earlier in this, so I don't want to be too redundant, but it's the people, right? So I'm surrounding myself with people who kind of enable me to do multiple things at once. You can't be the CEO of a fast casual concept and the chief operating officer of a fine dining Italian restaurant if you're the only person working. And there is just a huge team involved with both. So I think that's part of it. The person who I took to help run Federal Donuts and Chicken with me actually came from the Vetri business. He was in fine dining. He's got this really great fine dining background and wanted something more. Told me he wanted something more. I said, "This is going to be kind of out of the box for you, but I'm doing a new project. Would you like to join me?" And he's like, "Yeah." So, like, if he didn't join, it'd be a lot harder. So, balance. You help create balance. I also stay pretty grounded because I have uh, as you know, a great family. So I desire spending time with them. So it's a lot easier for me to say, listen, today I'm doing this, but at 5 o'clock I'm going to be home for dinner with you. Or when my daughters are home from college, which is rarer and rarer these days, I'm going to make sure I'm around. So and again, many of those meetings we took enabled me to do that today. I will tell you that from 98 to probably 2005, I wasn't as able to create my own time. So it's to those of you who are listening or just launching your career who don't see that you're able to not miss your child's baseball game or basketball game or dance competition, it'll come. I'm not here to tell you it's easy, but you have to really be deliberate. Most of you are deliberate in your job day to day, but your job is to be a good parent, good spouse, good partner, as well. So create that balance.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely is something that is a common thread talking to leaders is that you put your dues in, you do what you're supposed to do, you network, you say yes, you learn, and it makes space and time so that you can do other things in the future. And I always tell people,
But you have to be
yeah,
deliberate about
yeah,
it
like where do you want to be 5 years from now? Work back. How do you get there? How does somebody else who's there already? What did they do? Right? And
and truth be told, don't stress if you have to deviate. Um, you know, it's going to end up being a blip in time on the timeline of my career or our careers. But 2020, if anything good can come out of it, is it showed us that we know how to deviate and change our trajectory a little bit and do it. And look, we're all here today. We're working maybe a little differently or a different capacity. But just because you set your 5-year goal and in year 3 something throws a curveball at it, don't scrap the project.
yep, yep. And surround yourself with like-minded and great people, right? Um,
Yeah.
so throughout all this, you're also writing books. What was that? Just like you woke up one day, you're like, I'm going to write a book. I mean, what was the hospitality book your first one, or did I
Yeah.
miss one?
Nope, that was the one. I like to write, and writing has taken on a different, definition these days because you could write verbally, you can speak into a thing, but I like to know that my thought that I had yesterday, I'm not gonna forget I had. So I'll jot it down and I mean, look, like, but and so someone said, you must experience a lot. At the time, all the chefs are writing cookbooks. Front of house guys just weren't doing it. I mean, obviously, famously, Danny Meyer did it. Many have followed, but I wasn't looking to write the how-to of hospitality, but I also wasn't looking to do a tell-all. Oh my God, the time that the chef threw a pan at me, or catching people doing untoward things in the bathroom at your restaurant. I wasn't looking to do that either, but I was looking to write a book, the stories of which could inform the next generation of restaurateurs or hospitality professionals hey, what you just experienced is not an anomaly. It's fun, but here's a lesson I took from it. In front of house, I did write, a story about something that happened to me at a Burger King once that I took into the fine dining atmosphere as a lesson. So really just meant to tell a story. And I'm actually in the process of updating that book. And we haven't decided whether it's going to be a brand new book or the book itself will be just updated with newer version, new chapters. And, I've got probably 3 tables of contents for 3 different books sitting on my computer right now.
Well, let me know when that comes out. I highly anticipate it. Um,
Thank
and
you.
now you're also, you're a CEO, board member of Federal Donuts and Chicken. And that was, I don't want to use the word deal because it kind of is an understatement, right? Can you share a little bit about how that came about? Because that was like a concept and then there was an investment and opportunity and now you're focused on growth.
Yep. Um, so look, I mean, the seeds were kind of years ago. We had a line cook named Michael Solano who, was just an
I've heard of him.
amazing, yeah, he's been around, you may Google him, and he was just an amazing guy because he showed up every day just eager to figure out something new that he could do. One day he came to me and said, "Hey, I don't know anything about the business of running a restaurant. My goal in life is to own a restaurant. Do you have time to spend with me?" And no one in the back of the house had ever interacted with me in that way. I said, "Sure." On Tuesdays, I usually do our books and I create the P&L and forecast. And if you want, you can join me on Tuesdays. And he did. And he did. And he kept doing it every Tuesday. And we ended up writing a business plan together. And we ended up becoming very close friends. We joke a little bit. My 22-year-old daughter, Rebecca, was one of the first babies he ever held. And now my younger daughter, Allie, babysits for his baby. Um, but we stayed in touch over the years, and we watched his Mediterranean-based, Israeli-based restaurant empire become an actual empire. And him and his partner, Steve Cook, with 3 other partners, launched this little donut and chicken thing just because they were having fun and they had a space that was roughly 800 square feet on Federal Street. And it was cute and it was fun. And like a lot of us do, we do these kind of vanity play passion projects that have literally no ability to scale, and for better, worse, or indifferent, it kind of scaled a little bit. And they got to the point where it was starting to be noticed by people that they could probably grow this thing to a national brand. Pause for a second. I had been involved in some other transactions. I got a little glimpse of what it takes to do some M&A work in the restaurant business. So people would occasionally call me and ask for advice on these things. During the pandemic, when we all had literally nothing to do, I did get a call from a friend of a friend who's in the private equity world and said they were working on some deals. Would I be willing to have coffee? So we sat outside at a restaurant that was still open outdoors and we had coffee and talked about deal making and what were some brands that were kind of ripe for growth. And we both landed on the fact that he was probably alluding to a brand that I knew, and it was Federal Donuts. And I said, listen, if a deal's going to happen, I'd like to participate and I'd like to become an investor. But I also think I can help. I could be a strategic investor. I don't just want to give money to you. He called me a few weeks later, so he could use some help shepherding it through. And would I invest and also take the independent board seat? So I said, absolutely, no problem. I would be honored to work with Mike and Steve, and certainly love to bridge the gap between PE and restaurants, which it's a needed relationship if you wanna grow, but sometimes there could be some disconnect. The wants and needs of a PE firm and the wants and needs of an entrepreneur are not always aligned, and I was there to kind of wear both hats. I know what an investor wants, I also know what the creator wants. But within several months of joining, we realized that there were things that were standing in the way to scale, um, systems of creating product in multiple locations at the same time in different states. So we spent about so as the story gets told, it'll be that I reluctantly stepped into the CEO role. They asked, I said no, um, but like an hour later, I said yes. um, but so I've been operating in the CEO role for the past year and a half, and really, basically, we just did a deep dive into what's working and what's not. And now, in the past several months, we've launched a franchising business. We've successfully sold 13 units. And I have every reason to believe that'll double over the next year or so, and every reason to believe that it'll be a successful nationwide scale in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, congrats, congrats.
Thanks.
I played my part, in the beginning when I used to every time I visited Philly, I would bring home a box of donuts too. On the train, I was that person that had the wafting aroma of donuts and chicken in my lap.
Nothing sells the donuts more than the smell of a donut.
Yeah,
I
hey.
mean, the reason why we have the hot, fresh donuts really for the most part is a great marketing.
I did spare the riders, I did not eat any on the train, I waited till I got home, but,
Well, you should
it
have
was
brought more than just
I mean,
handing them out to people.
hey, that's good, I mean, that would be very hospitable of me. Um, so, I would say what's next, but it sounds like, this is the current what's next focus, and then another book on the horizon.
Yeah, well, I know I was told not to move.
Uh,
I did just come out with another book.
Ooh,
This one has nothing to
congrats.
do with the restaurant business other than it does not to my relationship with Mark and how we ran the business. But as you alluded to, I'm a baseball fan. And so it's a story of my father and I going to baseball games together over my lifetime. And the fact that really the true quality time I had with him was during 9 innings of a baseball game. So I don't know if you saw that it's titled extra innings because really all wanted was extra innings with him. So but it does have a hospitality component because you asked what's next, and the truth is I want more. I want another inning. I'm not gonna retire. My kids started laughing at me when I alluded to retiring, so I just stopped saying it. It's not gonna happen. But I wanna do more of this. I liked helping a young brand get bigger and better, and I suspect that once the Federal Donuts and Chicken brand is fully matured and my needs, I'm not needed, I'll find another brand that does the same thing and do it again.
Yeah, I mean, that's that entrepreneurial spirit slash fire in you, right? I think a lot of people in this industry who, realize one day or realize from the beginning that one day they want to own their own business or they want to, it's a very entrepreneurial industry in general, especially the independent restaurant, world of it, right?
There's not as big a barrier to entry as many other industries because you can work as a busboy or a server or a line cook and very realistically believe you're one day going to own the restaurant you're working in. And that doesn't happen in a lot of industries.
Yeah, absolutely. And now more than ever, there's just more tools. There's more, one of the reasons why we do these hospitality career paths and in this podcast, Hospitality on the Rise, is to show people, get some real examples of how people have done it and what they're doing and how they thought about it, how they continued it, what they're thinking about next, etc. There's something to be said about keeping, it's a lot of hard work, as you said, and everyone knows. And you can get stuck in a rut every now and then or get frustrated in any industry, but hospitality, I think, is like next level. The inspiration and the examples are so helpful in many different ways. It could motivate somebody. It could give them different ideas on how to approach things. It could flip a switch in a certain way that could really put them on a different trajectory. So I think what your path here, I think is very eye opening in many different ways because you've done so many different things, but they all have a common thread.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad you do things like this podcast because I do want there wasn't podcasting when I was coming up in the business, but for lack of a better term, misery loves company, or we like to commiserate, right? So I wish I could have had access to 20 people feeling what I was feeling when I was distressed over the business and what's next for me. And you know what? There's 100 people going through what I'm going through right now. I'm not patient zero in the world of stagnant growth. And you're gonna have that moment where you go home and say, should I leave the industry? And by the way, it's healthy to ask yourself the question. If you continually ask yourself that question, then maybe the answer is yes. But the reality is that if you're into it and you really want to work hard and you don't mind taking time to do it, and you know this starts, someone out there is going to recognize your potential and help you get through it.
Absolutely. Just make sure you take the meeting.
Take the meeting. That's it.
Well, on that note, it is quick fire time.
Right?
What advice would you tell your younger self?
Don't be discouraged. There were plenty of times where I was going in at 5 a.m. and the things you missed. Don't sit there and recount. Oh, I missed that party or I missed my friends doing this. Don't do that to yourself. Stay focused. Keep your eye on the prize. You'll get there.
What's your advice for someone struggling in the industry?
You know what? Here's the revert ask to the meeting. Find people like me. You know what? We've been there, done that. And I often tell people the reason why I know what I know is just longevity. I'm not smarter than you. I'm just 30 years into it, and so come to me and say, I'm really struggling. I'm in a rut. What do I do? I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to give you your options. I'll give you 4 or 5 options. And there's hundreds of me out there. Um, don't don't go to your next friend on the line cooking next to you because they're going through the same thing you are. You're just gonna it's gonna be you two bitching and moaning to each other at that point. Go to someone who can actually affect change, and there's plenty of us out there.
What's your advice for fellow hospitality leaders?
Don't forget where you came from. You were that guy on the line bitching and moaning at one point. You were that assistant general manager who was working the overnight shift at one point, complaining about the industry. Just because you've gotten some sort of modicum of success measured financially or just with notoriety or with Instagram followers, for all I know, you weren't always that person. Um, the good news is most of the people I'm surrounding myself don't suffer from that ailment. But I have met people, and you have too, in this industry and in any industry that feels like they've gotten to this level and they're kind of breathing rarefied air. We're all breathing the same air, and you know, don't forget because also, especially in our industry, we're in the hospitality business, and you know, you can be super hospitable to your guests, but don't forget you're also supposed to be hospitable to the people you work with.
Love it. Thank you. And I'll take a minute to also thank you. You have always been very supportive and recognized culinary agents from the very beginning and put me in rooms that I otherwise wouldn't have been. So I appreciate that. And culinary agents
Pleasure.
appreciates that, all the ongoing support. And I asked for the meeting. You took the meeting.
Exactly. See,
And here
we're
we
we're
are.
proof. To those of you listening, we are proof. I took the meeting back when I was getting Culinary Agents pens as a kid.
Yeah, 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 I still
Uh,
have some for you. Um, you can use
Thank
them
you.
to sign your new books.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for your time and sharing your experience and your timeline. Can't wait to see what's next and then what comes after that. And congratulations on everything.
Thanks so much. You as well.
Remember, success looks different for everyone in hospitality. No two paths are the same. If you have a leader or a topic you want to hear about, email media@culinaryaagents.com. Hospitality on the Rise is brought to you by Culinary Agents, connecting top talent with employers since 2012. Whether you're hiring or looking for your next opportunity, join us at culinaryagents.com. For more inspiration, subscribe to Hospitality on the Rise and visit hospitalitycareerpaths.com, a free platform by Culinary Agents. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. And if you love this episode, share it with someone who could use a little inspiration.